What's going on, guys? Welcome back to WWE Network and Chill, where I, Graham G.S. Matthews, break down all the original content I watch on the WWE Network as well as on the E! Network, as today we're talking Season 5, Episode 7 of Total Bellas, entitled Bella vs. Bella. So I thought the last episode ended on a great cliffhanger, because we now know that Nicki's pregnant, currently. She's obviously pregnant with her upcoming daughter, son. I don't think that's been revealed yet as of this recording, as is Bri, which is also not really hinted at any of the recent episodes of this show. But we ended the last episode with Nicki about to take her pregnancy test. And not only that, but she was in the room with Mama Bella, Kathy, her mom, and then Artem walked in. You know, unbeknownst to Artem, what the hell was going on here. So you're kind of left in a position to think maybe she's not going to tell him, or she actually is pregnant, who knows. So as soon as the episode starts, we pick up right where we left off at the end of the last episode, and Nicki just outright tells Artem, I'm about to take a pregnancy test. I'm 2 weeks late on my period, blah, blah, blah. I want you to be here for it. You know, she actually has him go into the bathroom to help her with the test. It's very weird. I didn't really need to see Nicki on the toilet about to take the test the same way that they showed Brie Bella on the toilet about to take the test, or actually doing the test, rather. You know, peeing and shit. I don't really need to see that, so that was a bit unnecessary. But Artem does say outright, he's actually not nervous at all. When she tells him, hey, I might be pregnant, he's not like, oh man, I fucked up, like, we weren't planning on it. Obviously, I don't think they were planning on it, but he is pleasantly surprised, it seems like, because he wants to have a family. He's always envisioned himself having a family, and he's actually very excited for the possibility of Nicki actually being pregnant. And then they find out, drumroll please, she's not. She's not pregnant. Nicki's actually very relieved. She wants to celebrate by drinking wine, blah, blah, blah. Artem, on the other hand, is actually bummed about the whole thing. He's bummed that she's not pregnant because he was like, oh man, I really wanted to be a dad. And obviously he will be a dad at some point. We actually now know that she's pregnant. I don't know when it happened. I'm sure we'll find out by the end of the season, which we're quickly approaching, by the way. I don't know how many episodes are in Season 7, or rather in Season 5. I'm looking at Episode 7 here in my notes. But in past seasons, it's usually been around 10 episodes, so I would assume that we're going to be ending this thing around, like, usually they take like a mid-season break. They're not even doing that. I think they're airing all the episodes of Season 5 all at once. So anyway, Nicki's relieved, but Artem is bummed. He's kind of bummed that he's not going to be a father, at least not yet. And Nicki says, and I'm kind of on Nicki's side here when she goes, hey, it's too soon. We've only been dating a year. I'm not quite ready for that yet, you know? So anyway, Bree meets up with Nicki later on in the episode, and Bree and Brian, by the way, were on the phone, as well as Mama Bella. She came back into the room when the test was revealed to be negative. And Brian's name for Nicki's baby, if she had a baby, I doubt this is still on the table, unfortunately. Bree and Brian said that they would adopt Nicki's baby. Obviously, jokingly, they said this here. He said that they would adopt Nicki's baby, maybe if they didn't want the baby or something, and they would name him, if it was a boy, Artemis Dick Danielson, which is absolutely amazing. I really wish that was the name they would go for, but it's not a Danielson, nor are they adopting the baby, and I don't even know if it's a boy. So unfortunately, that would be a great name for their next kid, because Brie wasn't even expecting to have a child, I don't think, at this point. And now they're having kids together. I mean, not together, but at the same time. So maybe if it's a boy, we can expect the boy to be named Artemis Dick Danielson. That's a name to keep an eye out for. But anyway, so Bree meets up with Nicki right after this and questions what she wants out of life after all the issues that she's been having with Brian throughout Season 5. Brian, we meet up with him and we see him wanting to learn how to do a girl's braid for Birdie's hair, which I think is absolutely adorable that he wants to even attempt to do that. Currently, that's not something I want to explore. I've tried with hair before and stuff like that on other people, and it just never goes well. So I commend Brian for that, because it's not an easy thing for most guys or dads to do. So Bree and Brian are just enjoying the peace and quiet. I don't know where Birdie is at this point, but Nicki and Artem aren't around. I don't know where Birdie is, but I guess Nicki and Artem left for the night, and they're enjoying the peace and quiet. And then all of a sudden, Bree wants to turn it into a competition with Nicki, with who can braid whose hair faster, because they're kind of braiding each other's hair. And then Bree goes, hey, let me call up Nicki, or let me take a picture and send it to Nicki and say who can braid whose hair faster. And Brian's like, listen, not everything has to be a competition. Why can't we just enjoy our time alone together without having to rely on other people? So Nicki and Artem talking about how they talk about how they're going back and forth between their two places. Nicki staying with Bri and Brian in the new house and whatever, and then Artem living on his own back in Los Angeles. So it hasn't really been all that convenient, saying that their sex life has suffered, which again, didn't really need to know that, but they bring it up, so I gotta note it. Anyway, so Artem has to go to London right after this to defend his Guinness World Book of World Record or whatever. His world record for, dancing as quickly as you can in the matter of a minute or something along those lines. It's something completely ridiculous, yet something completely up his alley as a dancer, as a star in Dancing with the Stars. So they're out for dinner, and Artem asks Brian, hey, do you want to go fishing? Because Artem wants to get closer to Brian. That's kind of a sub-story on this episode, on this show, where Artem wants to kind of find bonding time with Brian. Brian doesn't really give a shit, but Artem does. So he asks him to go fishing. Not a great idea because Brian's I don't think he's vegan or vegetarian anymore, but he's a big animal rights person. And he told a story, and I think he talked about this in his book, as I've heard this story before. He brought up how he went fishing one time with his dad. He used to fish when he was younger, and maybe his sister too, but he told this story about how he would see the fish and envision himself as the fish, going for the food, getting, hooked up to the surface and not being able to breathe and then being killed and eaten. He doesn't want to go through that, even if it's him on the human side of things. You know what I'm saying? He doesn't really like the process of fishing. So, in short, he said, no, I'm not going to go fishing with you, but I appreciate the offer anyway, is what Brian said. So, yeah, Artem reveals to the camera behind the scenes that he wants to be more involved with Brian after kind of seeing the relationship between Bri and Nicki and how close they are. He wants to be maybe not that close because they're twins. He wants to be just as close to Brian as Bri is to Nicki, or at least, semi-close, somewhat close to how Bri is to Nicki as twins, So it's at this dinner that Nicki asks Bri and Brian, kind of awkwardly because Artem's there too, so they're not going to give their actual genuine feelings because they're kind of coming across like a dick if they do. Although that doesn't stop Brian from saying, so at the dinner, Nicki goes, hey, our house probably won't be ready for another 3 weeks. Do you mind? She doesn't say, do you mind if we stay with you? I mean, she hints at it, obviously. It's kind of the nice way of saying, do you mind if we stay with you a little longer? And there's obviously a lot of hesitation there, a lot of trepidation, because Bri and Brian want to enjoy their time alone together and not want to have Nicki and Artem stay any longer than they have to. But apparently they're going to have to. And Brian, again, it might have been an old editing trick to make it sound like there were more, long, silent pauses in between answers. But you could definitely tell that Brian is not all on board with it. Nicki's nice and says yes, of course. Not Nicki, but Bri is nice and says yes, of course, because why would they say no? But you could tell they're not entirely happy with the situation because they're of their own situation of wanting to be alone, and having Nicki and Artem there doesn't really help with that problem at all. So Brian talks to Bri about it on the way home, and he sees it as a sacrifice to their own relationship. Bri is not mad about it, but Brian says, listen, that's because you don't want alone time. So Brian's also frustrated with how she's always on her phone, Bri that is. He would wake up in the middle of the night, he says, and see Bri on the couch watching TV with Nicki and Artem, and they're all on their phone. He absolutely hates that. That's one of his biggest pet peeves, apparently, is people being on their phone, which I completely understand. So then we fast forward, we see Artem packing for London. And this is when he kind of confides to Nicki that he wants to grow closer to Brian. And Nicki says, you don't really have much in common, but because Artem wants to do things that Brian doesn't really like and vice versa. Nicki does say, though, you both like flannel, so maybe he can help you pack. Jokingly, not really jokingly saying that. So anyway, Nicki talks about how they went to a photo shoot, her and Bri. And she talked about how almost having a baby, almost thinking she was going to have a baby, freaked her out a little bit about her age. Because her pregnancy, or, almost pregnancy, I should say, made her think about how, I think she's 36 at this point. So the older you get, obviously, for females, it's harder to have kids. So that kind of scared her a little bit. Is it now or never? Does she have to have kids now? She wants to be a mom, but at the same time, her career is her baby. What does she do? She's conflicted. Meanwhile, Bri's trying to plan a date night with Brian, but both are busy at almost every single point throughout the month. And then Bri gets really frustrated back at the house after Brian's not there because Nicki comes back early from wherever she was. And then Bri didn't pick up enough groceries, and then they just start getting completely out of control. Bri's a little short with Nicki. You can tell she's a little frustrated, but Nicki's the one who kind of flies off the handle, calls her a bitch. Bri remains fairly calm, which I thought was surprising. But Bri had said, I'm not expecting you, and you should probably tell me ahead of time that you're coming home at a certain point. She wasn't expecting Artem to come home early at that point either. So they also argue over Nicki not picking up after herself, and Artem as well, and how, Nicki would never act that way when Bri stayed with her, and all this other stuff. They just completely get out of control, and Bri doesn't really want them in the house, and Nicki feels that, she doesn't feel comfortable in the house. Artem doesn't feel comfortable in the house. Neither of them feel comfortable there. But the least they could do is be, nicer and whatever. And Bri and Brian, I would say, are doing the best they can. But Artem, it kind of goes both ways. Bri shouldn't have been as short as she was, and Nicki probably shouldn't have been as angry as she was either, because she got real nasty real quick there. And then they kind of get nasty at each other sometimes, but Nicki definitely more so than Bri, I would say, from what I've seen anyway. So anyway, Nicki calls her a bitch, and she just walks out. And then Bri is like, well, you left this dish in the sink, you left that, cup in the sink, blah, 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 you left that glass in the sink, and she's having to clean up her mess even after Nicki leaves. So Bri then tells Brian that he doesn't open up enough, that's a tongue twister, open up enough to Artem, and that he should probably make more of an effort to do so. And she tells him to kind of put in the effort. So Brian feels, I feel like you're kind of pawning me off on him because you don't really want to deal with me yourself, which I don't really feel is entirely accurate, but that's how Brian feels because he really just wants alone time with his wife, which, can you blame him? So Nicki picks up Artem from the airport, and they never really get enough alone time either, so they just go from there to a dinner date. They go out to have dinner with each other, and it's there that Nicki asks Artem, would you still be with me if I couldn't have kids? And again, it might have been an editing trick, but he kind of pauses and says, I don't know. Which is a great answer. He doesn't say yes, like that would be the answer for most people, or like what you would want her to hear. Or that's, the answer that you would expect her to want to hear, and it probably was. But he's honest when he says, I don't know, because he's always wanted to have kids, and, it's one of those things. And they don't really get to finish the conversation. She has wine spilled on her, so they don't really get to finish what they were talking about. But he does say, like, I really do want kids, so I don't know. And you knew that from the get-go, that I wanted kids. And she is talking more from a standpoint, not that she doesn't want kids, but that she can't have kids because she's getting older. You know what I mean? So they don't really conclude that conversation before she gets the wine spilled on her, which she takes very well, by the way. She doesn't freak out or whatever. She completely understands because it's a bit embarrassing for the guy that spilled the wine on her. It's some, like, random kid. So anyway, meeting back up with Bri and Brian, Brian admits that he wants to appropriately contribute to the relationship, make an effort to get closer to Bri, plan a trip, go out and hang out. I don't know if it would be with Birdie, but he is making more of a conscious effort to get closer to his wife just to see, we have to see if we can work this out. We want to see if this trip will help us connect, and if not, whatever, we have bigger problems here than the PDA shit they were talking about an episode or two ago. But it's a good step in the right direction. And Bri fears that the marriage may end if they don't work on this. If this is something they don't really tackle now, their marriage will suffer in the long run. So Brian, I guess, called up Artem while he was away, asking him if he could help him on a project. I guess building a garden for Bri, which is what she wanted. And I'm sure that's legitimate, but he wanted to include Artem by asking him if he would partake in this activity. And he says yes, and they have a fun time. Meanwhile, we see Bri apologizing to Nicki for getting angry with Nicki and saying it stemmed from being frustrated with Brian at that point. And she admits that she never really felt like Artem and Nicki were at the house. She was just frustrated with other things and kind of took it on Nicki when she didn't have to. Nicki, I don't think, apologized for calling Bri a bitch, but that's a whole other story. Bri even says, hey, we probably should go to therapy, like not even couple therapy, but like twin therapy. And Nicki says, nah, we'll always be the way that we are. And they just dismiss it, and that's the end of the episode. So I thought it was a good episode. Be sure to check it out right now on the E! Network, Season 5, Episode 7, Bella vs. Bella. I forgot what the next episode tackles. I remember watching, they're living right next to each other, because by the end of this episode, Nicki's house is completed. So they kind of, experiment with that a little bit, living right next to each other. And I forgot what other issues they explore in that next episode. But we'll find out next week right here on the E! Network, and I'll discuss it right here next week on WWE Network and Chill. So until then, guys, be sure to like this video, drop a comment, share the video, and subscribe to the channel for more content. New Total Bellas review going up next Friday, very likely here in the channel. Be sure to subscribe again for more daily content. Tomorrow is my audio SmackDown review. Sunday, I believe, is my Break It Down AJ Styles review. That's available right now on the WWE Network. My review should be up on Sunday. Then Monday, my review of Chapter 2 of Undertaker: The Last Ride, which is going up, I think, first thing on Sunday. So a lot to break down. Tuesday, the latest installment in the MCU Rewatch Review Series with Chris Mueller breaking down Thor. So if you're not already subscribed, definitely do so. Hit that subscribe button. Also, click the notifications button to be notified every time a new video goes up. Until next time, guys, enjoy the rest of your week, and I'm Graham G. Matthews, and I'll catch your ass down the road.